The question is, will they vote? Because a lot of them are very angry at Republicans, to be honest with you. They're
Why is
angry
that?
I don't know. I mean, they're angry at Republicans, but they're not angry at me.
Interesting thing. Why?
They're not angry at me, but they are angry at Republicans.
It's Ken Harbaugh with the MeidasTouch Network. This is delusional. I don't mean that in just a derogatory way. I think that's actually what's happening here. The president is so insulated from reality that he doesn't know what's going on around him. And it's dangerous. He controls America's nukes, after all, but it's also the kind of thing that Democrats running for office should be capitalizing on. Even in deep red districts, the disillusion with Trump and his MAGA project has set in, especially on the economy, which used to be the Republican Party's strongest issue in these areas.
For the first time in a decade, a new Reuters poll finds that voters prefer Democrats over Republicans when it comes to economic issues. And a new Associated Press poll finds 69% say the state of the economy is poor.
And by the way, as unpopular as the Republican Party may be with the voters, Trump's approval is even lower. That whole line of his about voters not being mad at him, delusional.
He's full of it. The president's full of it. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I mean, that is the scientific answer. That's a scientific phrase. I mean, you could just see it here, how voters are feeling. 43% of them in an average of polls are choosing the Republicans for the House. The Republicans for the House are outrunning President Trump. The bottom line is this. When Donald Trump says that voters are angry at Republicans, not him, that simply put is not the case looking at the data.
The swing we are seeing toward the Democratic Party has been historic. There are districts now in play that no one thought were in reach. One of those is Missouri's 2nd, where an old friend of the show and someone familiar to anyone who follows Meidas just picked up the Democratic nomination for Congress. Fred Wellman is a retired Army officer and combat pilot with 4 tours in Desert Storm and Iraq, a West Point and Harvard Kennedy School graduate and host of On Democracy with F.P. Wellman on MeidasTouch. Here's our conversation. Hey, Fred, thanks for joining me. Been a while. You've been busy, I guess. I don't know what you've been doing, but I've missed you, man.
Yeah, there's other thing going on.
What happened a couple Tuesdays ago? You are official.
We're official. We won the nomination to be the Democratic nominee for Missouri's 2nd Congressional District, take on 13-year Republican incumbent named Ann Wagner. It was awesome. You know, it was a late night. How these elections go. Our friends at St. Louis County Elections Board had a data glitch, so we were all hanging on the edge of our seats for about an hour and a half longer than I'd hoped. But we came in, we won it, got a call at about 10:15. It's been really exciting. You know, it's funny how much things change once you're the nominee. Wonderful calls from across the country. Jason Crow called, a number of other folks who are, well, I consider friends as well, supporters, and now we're just piling on. We got 85 days to get to the general election now.
Well, it does seem like something special is happening across the country, especially in these districts that should be out of reach. No offense. But I got the same thing going on up here in places like the Ohio 7th. We have the advantage of Max Miller as the incumbent, who is an absolute disaster of a human being. But your incumbent ain't much better. She has somehow grown rich as a representative in Congress, which is, it's not the kind of job you're supposed to get rich in, but she has pulled it off. And the contrast with you could not be clearer. Give us just the bullet points on Ann Wagner, and then I want to talk about your story and especially what you're bringing as a combat vet at a time when America is at war, despite what this administration says.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Look, Representative Wagner's been there, like I said, 13 years. She's won re-election over and over. She has managed to quadruple her net worth to an estimated $26 million now in her stock portfolio. They're very clever. They say, well, we don't trade individual stocks. Well, she's got enough money to trade entire portfolios at once. So she has done very well for herself, and that's great. Matter of fact, the month that the tariffs kicked in, she made $3.6 million in the stock market, right? And in a district where the median income is about $99,000 a year, there's a stark contrast between her net worth and the rest of us. So, and look, I have no problem with people getting well off. God bless them. That's great. She and her husband have worked their whole lives, he especially. But in the end, my problem is you're supposed to be a representative of the district and you're supposed to raise all of us up with you. And instead, I believe she's pulled the ladder up behind her. And then on top of that, we have very little to show for her efforts. She does not believe in bringing money home. She does not believe in town hall. She's never held a town hall. She does not believe in engaging with her constituents. We had a good laugh over the weekend. She went to the Washington Twin Cities, a town and country fair. It's one of the most popular country fairs in the region. And she went before it opened and met the organizers. No actual constituents were there, but she met the organizers. I spent 8 hours there sweating in the heat, meeting people. It's just, there's a difference in accessibility and understanding who you're supposed to represent. And I just think that Representative Wagner has kind of forgotten that. She works for the banks. Over half her funding comes from corporate PACs tied to the financial services industry. Every quarter she gets massive checks from that industry. I just don't believe that she's here to represent us and average working Americans. There's about 759,000 people in the district. They deserve representation, and that's why I'm running.
Hey, it's Ken with a quick break to tell you about a new short documentary, Safe Ground, which follows American military veteran Ryan Hendrickson, who I recently interviewed on this show as he leads a mine-clearing team in Ukraine. It's a riveting account of what these crews go through to clear minefields and unexploded ordnance, saving the lives of ordinary Ukrainians and giving them a chance at a normal life. The footage and storytelling are extraordinary. You can watch the film for free on MeidasTouch's partner channel, Valor Media Network. The link is below. Here's a preview of Safe Ground.
It only takes one mistake. You will get yourself or somebody else injured or killed. I know God has a plan for everybody's life, and I do know that you're not going to die before it's your time.
I know what these devices can do to you because I stepped on an IED in Afghanistan.
God doesn't waste pain. Use that pain and that experience to go help other people. Let's go. Civilian casualties from this war are high.
Russian drones target this place.
I got a solid hit. Something's here. We have to understand the dangers, and we have to understand what we're up against. Line!
Is corruption going to be an issue this year? Because it used to be that Democrats tried to run on corruption and voters tended to move it to the bottom of their list of concerns. They cared about it, but not as much as they cared about seemingly everything else. But in an economy where it is tough to put food on the table and you see your representative's net worth quadrupling to $26 million, when you see the president's family raking in literal billions of dollars as he is gilding statues in Washington, D.C., might corruption finally break through as a top 3 issue this cycle?
That is the top 3. It's funny. I had a member of Congress reach out to me, and we were talking. She goes, what I've been using and I love is, she calls it 3 C's. It's costs, it's corruption, and it's chaos. And those 3 C's are all tied together. The fact is, this corruption we're seeing at the presidential level and the administrative level is costing us money. It is driving the economy up. It is causing us to all have to pay. Just like the war in Iran is causing us all to pay more money, and it's not going to us. I think one of the things that bothers me is, Donald Trump has taken $350 million out of the National Park Service to apply to his White House upgrades and gilding statues. That's money. The number one most popular recreational item in the United States of America for working Americans are our national parks, which are now falling into disrepair because Donald Trump's using that as his personal piggy bank. I'm not sure you could have a more precise indication of what he thinks of us. 25 million people a year visit Smoky Mountains National Park. 2.5 million visit the Gateway National Arch right here in the St. Louis area. And yet that money is now being stolen and given to Donald Trump for his pet projects like changing the columns of the White House because he doesn't like them. Again and again, the corruption we're seeing. And in the end, the failure of what I call the Republican doormat Congress to control that corruption and actually participate in it is a huge issue for us here, because Americans see themselves falling further and further behind. You see the fact that their kids are falling further and further behind. There is not a door or a conversation I have with someone that doesn't go back to how kids today, our children, are struggling to make ends meet. And that's kids of any age, by the way. I delivered signs to a wonderful couple in their late 70s who were telling me how they're retired and they're on their pension and they're still helping their 4 kids make ends meet. Because like a break job now is completely out of the budget because they're paying so much for gas. They're paying so much for healthcare. They're selling so much for their household energy. And God forbid food has gone up. I think food has gone up, 27% since 2001. This is unsustainable. And no one in Washington, D.C. seems capable or interested in stopping this affordability crisis. So I think if you look at the fact that corruption does cost us, that it does tie together.
The other reason prices are so expensive. I mean, you can't ignore tariffs, but it's the war with Iran, this war of choice, this idiotic conflict with Iran, which is a strategic adversary of the United States, and the government of Iran is horrific. But we had been able to manage that conflict for 47 years without bombing Iran to smithereens, or what did Trump say? Wipe them off the face of the earth.
A civilization will end tonight.
Civilization will end. I think ABC, I can't remember which outlet, reported how many times Trump has threatened to obliterate Iran and tacoed every single time. I don't want him to make good on that threat. Don't get me wrong, but American credibility is shot around the world.
Yes.
Do the voters of the Missouri 2nd appreciate that, or do they care about it if they do appreciate it?
Yeah, you do. I hear a lot. I've had veterans, Republican veterans, come to me, say they're frustrated. Look, anybody knows that strategy has got to be part of your plans. And it's clear that there was no strategic plan. There was no, it is, when you've got somebody who's just was a major, topped out as a major, he's a squad leader. Pete Hegseth understands tactics. We all know, anyone who's studied war for any minute knows that blowing things up is only part of the solution to a war. And this unfortunate, here we are, they can't blow themselves up out of it. And then the other thing about this war in the end too is back to that economic message. Okay. The fact is, like you said, this war is different. It has cost us millions of dollars. It's costing average Americans thousands a month. When the Strait of Hormuz closed and gas prices shot through the roof, our farmers are desperate right now. I hear over and over that my farmers who haven't already ordered their fertilizer are scared to death. They simply won't be able to get it. They are in very deep trouble. It only gets worse. And in a lot of ways, every president in history has known that the economic impact of a war is what keeps people from participating, right? In the end, remember George W. Bush himself told us that we could all keep shopping to be patriotic, right? In the end, there's no escaping that Donald Trump's inadvertent, his failure, his malfeasance, the incompetence of Pete Hegseth, and not seeing that the Strait of Hormuz would be immediately closed and not seeing the global impact on that is causing economic real costs for average working Americans. And so again and again, and then you get back to corruption once again, the corruption of saying it's solved as the markets are getting ready to open and then going back on it. People are pumping and dumping hundreds of millions of dollars. As somebody pointed out to me on my show on the MeidasTouch Network, who has $180 million they can move into oil futures 15 minutes before the president makes an announcement? That's an easy question to answer. And that goes back, the funny thing about too is this ties back to my district. My opponent, Representative Ann Wagner, is the chairwoman of the subcommittee on capital markets. Her purview, her jurisdiction, Ken, you can't make this up. Her jurisdiction is the stock market and the SEC. And she has not lifted a single finger to investigate insider trading, the bump and dumps, all the things that are going on within the stock market, the manipulation of the stock market. She always talks about how everything is so important that we have faith in the markets. And yet we have the president of the United States clearly operating an insider trading operation that's going to undermine the stock market, but make people rich, to include her. And she's not doing a thing about it. So when you say, does this affect the people of Missouri too? Boy, does it ever. Now, the job I have, of course, is to explain this to folks in a simple manner. When you get into the stock market, you get into banking issues and the laws of banking that she is so ingrained in, it's hard to explain. But when you see, here's what's happened since this war started, here's who's getting rich off of it, it really hits home very directly. People are hurting. I think that's what drives everything I do. Average working people are hurting in ways that are unimaginable to the top 20%. And so when you see someone like Scott Bessent or the others on TV saying, no, everything is great, and you realize that 85% of all stocks are owned by the top 20%, you're right. They're doing fine, but the rest of us are struggling. I think we need someone in Congress who understands that working people aren't making ends meet right now and then is willing to do something about it when they get there.
I think if you can convey that just economic law of gravity that when the price of something goes up, somebody is making more money. You are spending more money. Someone else is making more money. If you factor out inflation and prices are going up, way more than the index, that's got to finally register corruption as a top 3 issue.
Corporations,
in my mind.
Record profits. Look, the fact is the oil companies say they're hurting, but they're making record profits. And instead of the trickle down economics model, instead of it going to the average working person, they're doing stock buybacks, they're doing dividends, they're paying the stock shares. Again, the top 20% are making all of the money. My God, look at the tariffs. They're now doing tariff refunds. Amazon isn't going to give me my money back. Right. My daughter owns a small business in Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. She imports things like citric acid and palm oil for her products, and she actually hand makes. She's not going to get a dime of all the extra money she's had to pay in the last year and a half, but her suppliers sure are. And at some point, we've got to realize that working people, the whole system is rigged. When you talk about why people are so angry, why these outsider candidates like me, I'm not the establishment guy. I may look like it, but I'm not the guy, right? When people like me are winning, it's because people want to hear someone say, I see you, I hear you, I'm going to Washington, D.C. to do something. Because if we don't go to Washington, D.C. and get stuff done, we have no business being there.
Which is why we need to send Fred Wellman to D.C. to represent Missouri's 2nd. Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Fred. Where can people learn more about your race, and how can they help?
Well, wellman4mo.com. That's wellman4mo.com. By the way, it's easy. All of our social media channels are wellman4mo. Look, I've got an opponent who's got, $4 million in the bank. We've done pretty well keeping up. We're on path, but honest to God, we're going to have to get a lot more money to fight her. So if you could give a donation, it would mean the world to me. Any amount helps. I'm very proud that we are really, truly running a grassroots operation. 20,000 donors giving $30 a piece. I'm taking no corporate PACs. I'm taking no APAC money. We are dead focused on helping working people succeed, and working people are powering this campaign. So if you want to volunteer, you want to come to St. Louis and knock on doors, St. Louis County, I'd love to have you. But in the meantime, it means the world to me. Give me a chance to tell people about our race, Ken. I really appreciate it, brother.
Awesome. We'll put all the links in the notes below. Great finally seeing you, Fred. I know you're going to get back to the
come up for every now and then.
Cool. Let's do it again soon.
Thanks, bro. I look forward to it.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.